Going on, dudes and dudettes? As you can tell, No Shave November is almost coming to an end with Thanksgiving on the way, but yeah, it's pretty crazy. It's not as thick and full as I thought. Of course, I knew it was going to be these stringy hairs, but whatever. I guess I know not to go this far again, maybe until next November, but we'll see. But this video is going to be pretty much all about USC. Got a lot of news about them, especially after their 20-38 shellacking loss against their hated rival, crosstown rivals, UCLA. It was tough because even after that first quarter, or actually I think around halftime, what was it, like 14-10 or something like that? And at some point it could have been 14-13, maybe 17-14, USC leading. And then yeah, I was able to watch that first half, but once I looked back after I was doing something else and saw that the score was already out of hand, I kind of just felt like USC didn't have the fight. And then they eventually had gotten like another field goal, but way later, and they're already still down by double digits, and ended up getting like a late touchdown to kind of salvage it to be not a 20-point loss. It was still an 18-point loss, but still just didn't feel like a lot of those players were into it and really wanted to be part of the USC culture and what it's all about, especially in a rivalry game. I don't know if that means there's too many transfers or there's too many young guys that aren't ready or weren't playing yet. And yeah, I don't know. It was just pretty bad overall. And I know a lot of people talked about, even we talked about on here, about how Chip Kelly, the UCLA head coach, is more on the hot seat and most likely going to get fired if he lost the game last Saturday. And of course, he ends up beating Lincoln Riley. And yeah, now they're destined to probably play in a cheap bowl game, because obviously they're going to be going to that because they're over the 6-win mark. But yeah, who knows who's going to be playing to that, and it could have been Caleb Williams' last time, the quarterback, playing, and it just sucks because of how much of a wasted season and opportunity this was. I know it's kind of weird because I kind of expected this type of season to happen last year, their first year, but for some reason they did great last year, winning 11 games, and this year they could only muster 7 with a definitely tougher schedule. And I think it was kind of messed up that the person who did the scheduling for the Pac-12 was a UCLA, either they work for UCLA or they were an ex-UCLA person, and of course they gave us the toughest schedule out of not only everybody in the Pac-12, but pretty much in all of college, especially down the stretch. But whatever. I guess you wanted to prove them wrong, you should have just stepped up and won every game. But yeah, either way, it does suck. I know even NFL executives are, saying that it's not really Caleb Williams' fault, or, how good of a player he is because of the season, how it's going, because it's obvious that he's thrown up some really good numbers, and for some reason, even like on 3, their Heisman rankings, they don't even have him in their top 10. I think at the bottom, there's like 2 defensive linemen out there instead of even him, even though his numbers are just as good as some of the guys who are leading in that category. As far as like stat wise, I think it's either Jaden Daniels, the quarterback from LSU, or Michael Penix Jr., the quarterback from Washington, who are pretty much leading categories and will most likely be invited. And of course, Jaden Daniels, an ex-California guy from San Bernardino, and of course they let him go first to ASU and then to freaking LSU. But either way, I don't know. We'll see how that ends up going. But yeah, doesn't look too good so far. And even a 247 Sports mock draft for the NFL came out during the week, and it even had, at that time, Caleb Williams going number 1 overall to Chicago, which definitely seems like they need it because they had a pretty bad loss this last, I think it was yesterday, Sunday, against Detroit, where they were leading like 26-14. And then, of course, Detroit comes back to win that. And yeah, and that's when your main quarterback, the guy you drafted high a couple years ago, came back and was playing and looked like he was still pretty good. But I don't know. You might have to let them fight it out to see who ends up winning it that one year. But yeah, overall, it's still, as of right now, we don't know exactly what he's going to be doing. Yeah, it's Caleb Williams, but I don't know. Hopefully we'll see, because he wasn't even interviewed. He didn't do an interview. Usually you have the best players come out, but I think maybe Lincoln Riley's idea was to bring out super seniors that are most likely not going to be able to return for another season. So he brought out, I think it was like a linebacker, and Justin Dedich, the center, as well. So either way, yeah, pretty bad look overall. And even before this game, there was news that a cornerback in Sierra Wright wasn't even with the team anymore or around the team anymore. So that was kind of weird because he was pretty much given the starting spot the last year or two, and then as always ended up losing it. But I don't know if that's just because of his play or what. But yeah, that was another guy. And I think even Michael Jackson III, the wide receiver, I forget if he has also been missing from the team or kind of on purpose, not playing or something like that. So that's another situation to look at because I really like him as an overall receiver, but he's always kind of been hurt too, which is why he's always had to play his way back up into a starting position. But there was more official, like on On3 Network, that said he was entering the transfer portal, and that is a defensive lineman in Jamar Sakona, I believe that's how you say it. And I think he was just a freshman. Yeah, he was only there for 1 year, and he didn't even get any playing time. So maybe he's upset at that. He felt he could have contributed right away, but that's kind of tough when they brought in a lot of talented guys ahead of him as well. I think he just thought he would stick it out, see if he could make the roster, at least starting. And I'm just kind of glad as of this second it isn't Sam Green, who looks like a better prospect than him, and even some of the other guys, how they were during the spring game. But hopefully I don't end up hearing his name. Just because they entered the portal does not mean they're officially gone. But yeah, it is, 1 foot out the door, as they say. So hoping none of these top players that we got this last year recently end up going to. And Dino Babers was recently fired from Syracuse as a head coach. He was a guy that I looked at even prior to them getting Lincoln Riley, that I liked and wanted them to get as their head coach, but he ended up sticking out over there and ends up getting fired. And I kind of always wondered if he was more the offensive side or defensive side, and it looks like he was on the offensive side as a coordinator before getting the head coach at Bowling Green and Syracuse as well. But yeah, I just think bringing in a guy like that who built up a really good program, because at times they won double-digit wins out there in Syracuse, which looked like it was tough to do for quite a couple of decades, but he was able to do that. So bring in a nice voice, an older voice, to be able to help you out, maybe change some of Lincoln Riley's philosophies as well, because they were a pretty tough team both on offense and defense. So I think this would be a nice get for him, whether he's part of the offensive line, coaching an assistant, offensive coordinator, helping with the receivers as well. I think he'll be good either way for that. And there's a top Michigan linebacker out there. I think he's like a 3-star linebacker, Desmond Stevens. And apparently after his visit this last week in the USC, pretty much they are trending to sign him. I think that's like over 80-something% to be able to sign him in the class of 2024, which is pretty cool because he's one of the better guys out there and is considering a lot of like Big Ten schools as well. So hopefully we're able to seal him from out of that part of the country and have him play for USC, because even though he's a 3-star, a lot of people still hold him in high regard as well. So hoping for the best. And USC basketball did beat Brown last night, 81-70. I didn't even know they were playing Sunday night, but yeah, it was a pretty close game throughout, but ended up getting this victory. I want to say, because they did lose to UC Irvine. I'm pretty sure we talked about that the other day. I want to see where Irvine and Brown end up towards the end, because a lot of people are saying, well, USC should have destroyed them because of how much talent they have. But even in that UC Irvine game, they're missing Boogie Ellis and Kobe Johnson, a lot of other guys as well in that game that they were using quite a bit in that first game or two. So I wasn't surprised about that, but I want to see where those teams end up because they're probably a lot better than what people think. But yeah, it was pretty much the Boogie Ellis and Isaiah Collier show. I think they combined for 50 plus points. I could be wrong, but definitely over 40 because they were definitely hitting a lot of threes out there, which was nice to see. And like I said, they just got the victory, which was good, and they were able to move up into the AP poll at number 23. I want to say they had gotten knocked out with that loss to UC Irvine, and they put them back up in there recently, which was nice to see. And I think even in the early rankings for the class of 2024 with the early signing period, they're already like the number 12 or 13th ranked team in the nation, which is pretty cool. I'll obviously get to Duke in another video where they're ranked, but that's pretty good for guys who are like right on the verge. I think one guy is maybe top 50 and the other two are top 100 barely, but that's still a pretty good ranking for them, in my opinion. So definitely looking forward to that part of the season coming up soon. I think even the women's basketball team, yeah, they play at some point tonight. I know it's at 6 o'clock, but I think they're playing in the Bahamas or somewhere like that, which is pretty cool. So they're playing against Seton Hall. Don't know how good the women's Seton Hall basketball team is, but the men's is pretty good and gives you a run for your money. So maybe it could be a good matchup for them, but hopefully they will do good in this mini tournament. So good luck to the women of Troy. So an ex-USC offensive lineman, Chad Wheeler, was recently found guilty of domestic violence, abuse, and charges. I believe the story was like he had maybe had gotten cut or something, and I guess he was trying to use that for the reason, his state of mind at the time for what he did. But I think at one point or multiple points he had, beat up his girlfriend or wife at the time, and even at one point when she had regained consciousness, he said, "Oh, are you still here? Are you still awake?" or something like that, which is awful to hear. So I'm definitely glad that he's getting what he deserves and is found guilty. But yeah, you can't get them all right. And he was one of the okay players. He wasn't that great of an offensive line. I think he didn't even get drafted. He got to New York and then eventually went to Seattle and all this stuff. But yeah, it's just a bad situation overall. Gets what he deserves, and I guess we'll move on because justice was served. And then, yes, the Michigan football team and Jim Harbaugh, there's so many things coming out. Even just recently, like they had that whole, they sent a guy to scout a team early, like secretly and all this stuff, which teams do, but they don't do it secretly like I guess Michigan was. And then they found out that a booster who were pretty much ex-alumni or people that really love the school that gives the money, they give their money back to the school, pretty much paid for another guy to do all this stuff, like maybe secretly go on someone else's bench or sideline and try to steal stuff from the other coaching. I don't know what the heck is going on. And yet all this stuff is happening. They're getting suspended their coach for a couple games here and there to start the season. Now they're suspending him again, another 3 games. And yet when it all comes down to this, them, Penn State, who had their whole Joe Paterno thing, and the Sandusky, I think his name was, with the whole child raping and stuff, like they hardly are going to get the axe that USC got with their program when it came to Reggie Bush, and they found out like a couple OJ Mayo stuff, whatever, on the basketball team, where they gave him like 7 years probation of going like to any good bowl games or even the finals if they were undefeated that year, which they were pretty close a couple of times those years with Matt Barkley. And then the reduce of scholarships, so at times they only had like 50 to maybe a high 60 amount when you could have like 80 plus players, and it just showed up on their depth, and they always ended up losing games and not really doing good towards their future, and guys didn't want to go to their school, and it left a pretty big skid mark out there. And yet when it comes to these other teams, they're just getting slaps on the wrist, and I just don't get it. It's pretty BS in my opinion. So I hope a little bit more ends up happening to them and their program when it comes to scholarships or other stuff. I mean, I think USC still has wins vacated. They're not allowed to put Reggie Bush's Heisman out there on display and all this crap, and I don't know, it's pretty dumb stuff. So yes, thanks for watching, people. Like, subscribe, comment down below. Let me know what y'all think. Have a great day. Bye. Fight on.